It always starts with a whisper, not a headline, not a public feud, just a whisper, quiet enough to be ignored, but too sharp to be forgotten. And this particular whisper began deep inside the walls of Royal Lodge, late one autumn evening, when two people who thought they had already lived through every royal scandal imaginable found themselves staring at an unmarked envelope that would change everything they believed about the monarchy and about Meghan Markle. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The clock had just struck midnight. A storm rattled the windows. Prince Andrew, tired, disheveled, and long accustomed to bad press, was sitting in his study, a room littered with unopened letters and fading photographs. Across from him sat Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, sipping tea she'd barely touched. The two had been quietly rebuilding their lives, coexisting like two people bound not by marriage, but by shared history and guilt. Then came the knock. 3 sharp taps. No words, no face. Just an envelope slipped through the crack under the door. No crest, no signature. Just one line typed in all caps. For your eyes only. Listen before it's too late. Sarah picked it up. What is it now? She asked, her voice half amused, half wary. Andrew didn't answer. He turned it over, felt its weight. Light, but thick enough to contain something serious. Inside, a small flash drive. No sender. No explanation. That's how it began. The two exchanged glances, that silent, uneasy royal instinct that says, we shouldn't, but we will. A few clicks later, the room filled with the low hiss of static, then a woman's voice. Calm, controlled, American, familiar. Don't make me do this. You know what I can say. Sarah's teacup hit the saucer. She didn't breathe. Is that? Andrew nodded slowly. Yes, he whispered. It's her. The voice was unmistakable. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. And she wasn't acting. The next few seconds felt like a century. A pause, then Meghan's tone hardened. If that report ever gets out, if you ever breathe a word about the birth, I will make sure you regret it. That was all it took for Andrew to realize they were holding something that could implode the royal family from within. But there was more. Much more. Now pause for a second. Because this is where the story gets strange. Why would Andrew and Sarah, of all people, have access to secret recordings of Meghan Markle? Why now? And why risk their already fragile reputations by bringing this into the light? You might think this is just another royal scandal, another headline about power and deceit. But this isn't gossip. This is a confession waiting to explode. Because those recordings don't just feature Meghan issuing veiled threats. They hint at a royal cover-up surrounding the birth of Archie, one that could unravel everything the palace has tried to protect for years. And that's exactly why Andrew and Sarah decided to break their silence. But let's back up for a moment, because to understand why these two are saying, it's time to tell you everything, you have to understand what drove them here. You have to see the pattern of secrets that began long before Meghan ever entered the royal stage. You have to see how the palace, once obsessed with control, became trapped in a web of its own creation. Andrew has always been the lightning rod, the prince who fell from grace, the one who learned how fast loyalty turns to isolation. Sarah, on the other hand, has been the eternal survivor, loved, hated, forgiven, and forgotten all in one lifetime. Together, they've been many things: exes, co-parents, scapegoats. But tonight, they were something different, witnesses. The tape continued. Meghan's voice shifted from anger to pleading. You don't understand what's at stake, she said. You don't understand what they made me do. Andrew leaned forward, staring at the waveform flickering on the laptop screen. Who is she talking to? Sarah whispered. Andrew shook his head. That's what we need to find out. For the next 20 minutes, they sat in silence, listening. Every word pulled them deeper into something they couldn't define, half confession, half warning. And in between the tension, a single name was whispered, a name that sent a chill through both of them. Archie. The room fell silent. Sarah pressed pause. She said Archie, she murmured. She said his name. Now, if you followed royal history, you know the mystery surrounding Archie's birth has always been one of the most heavily guarded and inconsistently told stories in modern royal memory. No hospital photos. No verified birth certificate. Even palace insiders have whispered about inconsistencies. But no one, not even the tabloids, ever had hard proof. Until now. Andrew exhaled, his voice low. This isn't just about threats. This is about something they've been hiding. Sarah turned to him. If that's true, then why us? Why send it to us? Andrew didn't answer. He just looked at the flash drive in his hand, as though it were burning. Because we're already disposable. And there it was, the irony of it all. The royals the world stopped trusting might now be the only ones telling the truth. But here's where things get truly unsettling. The timing. These recordings didn't surface months ago or years ago. They arrived now, amid King Charles's quiet retreat from public life, Prince William's growing distance from his brother, and Meghan's renewed push for American rebranding. Coincidence? Or a calculated move from someone inside the palace walls? You can feel the tension, can't you? The sense that this isn't just another tabloid drama, but the prelude to a revelation no one's ready for. Sarah paced the room, hands trembling slightly. We can't sit on this, she said. If what she's saying is real, people need to hear it. Andrew hesitated. You really think the world will believe us? Sarah looked up. They won't believe us, but they'll believe the recording. That single line would set everything in motion. Because once word got out that Andrew and Sarah had listened to tapes allegedly capturing Meghan threatening a royal aide, the palace went into immediate crisis mode. Calls were made. Lawyers were briefed. And silence, once again, became the royal family's default defense. But silence doesn't erase truth. It only delays its explosion. As the storm outside Royal Lodge grew louder, so did the storm within the monarchy. Andrew replayed the last seconds of the file again and again. Each time, Meghan's voice hit a different nerve. You know what I can say? She repeated. You know what I can expose. To whom was she speaking? And what did she mean by expose? Was she referring to the aide rumored to have vanished shortly after Archie's birth? The one insiders said knew too much. Or was she warning someone higher? Someone with the power to bury the truth entirely? The questions were endless, but one thing was certain. Andrew and Sarah had just stepped into the kind of story that could swallow them whole. Now, pause and think about this, because this is where history tends to repeat itself. Every royal scandal starts with denial, then deflection, then silence, until, one day, someone breaks the pattern. Maybe, this time, that someone is the pair the world least expected. Sarah watched as Andrew quietly slipped the flash drive back into its envelope. What are we going to do with it? She asked. Andrew leaned back, weary but resolute. We're going to listen to all of it. Then we decide. And that decision, to keep listening, would lead them down a path of rediscovery, confrontation, and betrayal that not even they could have imagined. Because this wasn't just about Meghan. This was about power, who wields it, who fears it, and who dares to speak against it. You see, what makes this revelation so devastating isn't just what's on those tapes. It's what those tapes represent. A moment when the facade cracks, when royal control gives way to raw, unfiltered truth. The truth that titles, money, and image cannot protect anyone, not even a duchess. But what happens when the truth comes from the mouths of those the world has stopped trusting? That's the paradox Andrew and Sarah now face. They aren't saints. They aren't saviors. They're flawed, complicated, and, in many ways, exiled. But maybe, just maybe, that's why they're willing to tell the truth when no one else will. Sarah broke the silence first. If we go public with this, it's going to be war. Andrew nodded. Then let it be war. The clock ticked on. Outside, the rain softened into mist. Inside, the flash drive sat on the desk between them like a ticking time bomb. And as dawn began to rise over Windsor, both knew there would be no turning back. They were holding something bigger than revenge. They were holding evidence. And while the palace slept, two people who had once been written off by history prepared to make it again. Because in the royal world, truth doesn't disappear. It just waits for the right scandal to bring it back to life. But what if the scandal isn't a lie at all? What if it's the first time someone finally dares to speak the truth? The screen fades to black. The voice replays. The final words echo like a warning. You know what I can say. And that's when Sarah looks at Andrew and whispers the one sentence that will ignite everything that follows. It's time to tell the world. Because this time, the secret wasn't theirs to hide. It was theirs to reveal. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the truth didn't knock? It slipped quietly under your door. That's exactly how it began. When the clock struck midnight at Royal Lodge that night, the air felt unusually heavy. Even the old floorboards seemed to creak slower, like the house itself knew something was about to shift. Andrew sat back in his worn leather chair, still in his suit from dinner, undone tie draped loosely over his chest. Sarah was in her robe, hair pinned back, eyes tired from another day of half-hearted phone calls and polite rejection. But when the knock came, 3 deliberate, measured taps, they both froze. No one knocked at that hour. Not at Royal Lodge. Sarah tilted her head. "You heard that too?" she whispered. Andrew nodded, pushing his chair back slowly. "Stay here." But of course, she didn't. She followed him to the door, silent but tense, as if both were walking into a memory they'd rather forget. When he opened it, the hall was empty. No footsteps, no shadows, just the faint smell of rain and an envelope on the floor. Unmarked. Plain. For a moment, neither spoke. Andrew's instincts, trained by years of caution and scandal, screamed to ignore it. But curiosity, the same fatal trait that had driven him into every tabloid headline, pulled him closer. He picked it up, felt the weight. A flash drive. A note. "For your eyes only. Listen before it's too late." He turned it over, half expecting to see a return address, an insignia, something royal, something official. Nothing. Sarah leaned in, eyes narrowing. A prank. Unlikely, Andrew muttered. No one pranks us anymore. There was no humor in his tone, only resignation. He walked back into the study, plugged the flash drive into the old laptop on his desk, and waited. The machine whirred to life, slow, impatient, like it resented being woken up for something dangerous. Sarah hovered behind him, arms crossed, as a single file appeared on the screen. Play__first.mp3. Andrew hesitated. Could be a trap, he said quietly. Sarah rolled her eyes. Andrew, at this point, what's left to trap? He pressed play. Static. Then silence. Then her voice. Calm. Precise. Familiar. You know what I can say. The tone was unmistakable, controlled, clipped, but sharp enough to slice through the static. Meghan Markle. Sarah's breath hitched. Is this? Andrew raised his hand. Listen. The recording continued. Meghan's voice trembled slightly, not with fear, but with restrained fury. You think you can hide the truth? I know what you've done. If this ever gets out, you'll regret it. Sarah covered her mouth. Andrew stared at the screen, as though expecting it to explain itself. Could be edited, he said finally. Or it could be real, Sarah countered. Listen to the cadence, Andrew. That's not an impersonation. That's her. He turned up the volume. Every breath, every pause, sounded too natural, too human to be fake. But the voice on the other end of the line, the one she was speaking to, was barely audible. A man. Nervous. Trembling. Please, Duchess, he said. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, she snapped. And so will everyone else, if you make me. The clip cut off. Static filled the room. Sarah's eyes widened. That's a threat. Andrew said nothing. He played it again. Same tone. Same words. Same tension. He sat back, the silence pressing against him like a weight. Who would send this to us? Sarah's gaze drifted toward the window. The rain had turned into a drizzle, the sound eerily soft. Someone who wants it out, she said. And someone who knows we have nothing left to lose. For a long moment, the two of them sat there, former royals, estranged lovers, accidental truth-bearers, staring at a piece of plastic that could ruin what little piece the royal family had left. Andrew finally broke the silence. We need to hear all of it. He clicked play again. The recording resumed mid-conversation. Meghan's voice, lower now, almost pleading. You don't understand what they'll do to me if this gets out. You think you're protecting them, but you're not. The man hesitated. It's not my decision. The report was sealed. Meghan's voice rose. Then unseal it. Or I will. And then, nothing. A click. A hum. Silence. The file ended abruptly. Sarah leaned forward. Where's the rest of it? That's all there is, Andrew muttered. Unless. He opened the flash drive's directory again. There it was. A second file, titled simply archive_02. His finger hovered over the mouse. You sure you want to hear this? Sarah smirked faintly. I've already survived you, Andrew. What's another scandal? He clicked. The new audio began without warning. Background noise. The rustle of papers. A woman crying softly. Then Megan again, calmer now, but colder. You think they'll protect you? They won't. They'll throw you to the press the second it suits them. I learned that the hard way. The man's voice returned, shakier. This isn't about you, ma'am. Oh, it's always about me, Megan said. Because I'm the one they'll blame. Unless you keep quiet. Sarah stepped back, heart pounding. That doesn't sound like someone defending herself. That sounds like someone issuing orders. Andrew nodded slowly. It's a threat. A deliberate one. But before they could analyze further, the audio crackled, and a single name slipped through, a whisper almost too faint to catch. Archie. Sarah froze. The word lingered in the air like smoke. She said Archie, she whispered. Andrew played it back. Once. Twice. A third time. There was no mistake. The name was there. His jaw tightened. So it's true. She's talking about the child. Sarah looked away, whispering almost to herself. Or about what people aren't supposed to know about the child. That sentence hung between them like a ghost. You could almost feel the room shrink. The air closing in, the quiet scream of realization that this was no harmless rumor. This was dynamite wrapped in velvet. Andrew stood, walking toward the window, rain streaking down the glass like tears. We shouldn't have heard this. But we did, Sarah said softly. And now we can't unhear it. Now pause for a moment. Because imagine being in that room. Two people the monarchy barely tolerates. A disgraced prince. A duchess who's seen every kind of betrayal. And now, in their hands, a secret recording that could rip open one of the most protected royal mysteries of the century. Would you listen to the rest? Would you take it to the press? Or would you bury it to save what's left of the crown? Sarah made the choice first. She grabbed the flash drive, clutching it tight. This doesn't leave here tonight, she said. Andrew turned sharply. You're not thinking of destroying it. No, she said. I'm thinking of protecting it. Until we know who sent it, and why. Andrew studied her face. He'd known Sarah long enough to read the fear behind her steadiness. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting the monarchy, or what was left of it. They spent the next hour in near silence, going through the metadata, trying to trace the source. But whoever sent it knew what they were doing. No timestamp. No sender IP. Every trace scrubbed clean. It was as if the recording had appeared from thin air. At around 2 a.m. The power flickered. Once. Twice. The lights dimmed. Sarah gasped. Relax, Andrew said, forcing calm. Old wiring. But deep down he wasn't sure. Because right then, in that quiet, candlelit study, it felt like someone, or something, was watching. He poured 2 drinks, handed one to Sarah. She took it without a word. The silence was deafening. The weight of what they'd heard pressed against the air like a storm waiting to break. Finally, Sarah spoke. You realize what this means, don't you? If these tapes are real, then someone inside the palace knew. Someone recorded her. Someone's been sitting on this for years. Andrew nodded. And now they want us to have it. Sarah frowned. But why us? Andrew didn't answer right away. He swirled his glass, staring into the amber reflection. Because we're the expendables, he said quietly. If it blows up, it's our faces on the front pages again. We're the perfect shields. That realization hit Sarah like ice. They weren't whistleblowers. They were pawns. But pawns can become dangerous when they realize who's moving the pieces. She stood, pacing. We have 2 choices. Ignore it and pretend we never saw it. Or find out who's behind it before it finds us. Andrew nodded slowly. Then we start tomorrow. He picked up the envelope again. On the back, faintly embossed, was something neither of them noticed before. A tiny insignia, barely visible under the lamplight. Not a crest. Not a signature. Just a single letter. H. Sarah leaned closer. What does that mean? Andrew exhaled. It means someone wants us to remember. The clock struck 3. The wind outside shifted. The flash drive sat quietly on the desk, gleaming under the faint light like a weapon waiting to be used. And as Sarah left the room, Andrew stayed behind, staring at the screen, replaying Megan's voice again and again. You know what I can say? Each time, it sounded different. Less like a threat, more like a prophecy. The rain finally stopped. The house grew still. But the questions had only just begun. Who recorded her? Who sent the files? And why now? Because if the timing was deliberate, and it almost certainly was, then this wasn't a coincidence. It was a message. A message meant for Andrew and Sarah. A message from someone inside. Someone who knew the truth was about to escape. And before the night was over, that message would lead them straight to a name they hadn't heard in years. The name of a man who vanished shortly after Archie's birth. A man who worked deep inside Buckingham Palace. A man Meghan once trusted. And when they finally said his name aloud, Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Because she remembered him. And she remembered what he told her the last time they met. But what he told her, and what he knew about the tapes, would change everything. And no one, not even Meghan herself, could stop what came next. Have you ever heard a single word echo so loudly that it rewrites everything you thought you knew? That's what happened that night at Royal Lodge. One name, whispered between static and fear, changed the entire direction of the investigation. Archie. The moment Sarah heard it, her hand froze midair. It wasn't just the name of a child. It was the key to a story the palace had spent years hiding. Andrew replayed that 3-second snippet over and over, his eyes locked on the audio waveform, like it might suddenly explain itself. The sound was faint but clear. Meghan's tone softened, almost trembling, as if she were letting her guard down for the briefest moment. Then, a whisper, Archie. Just one word. But it was enough. Sarah exhaled slowly, trying to make sense of it. She wasn't warning him, she said quietly. She was pleading. Andrew frowned. Pleading with who? That question lingered in the room, unanswered, louder than the recording itself. He clicked pause and turned to her. You realize what this means? This isn't about some petty argument. She's talking about the boy, about the birth. Sarah's voice dropped, or about what wasn't supposed to be said about the birth. And there it was, the thought neither of them wanted to say aloud. For years, whispers had haunted royal circles about Archie's mysterious arrival. No hospital announcement, no official record made public, no photographic evidence of Meghan leaving the maternity ward. Everything the palace normally showcased after a royal birth, silence instead. Even the christening had been private, behind locked doors, far away from the press. That secrecy alone had fueled 1,000 theories, but none had ever stuck. Until now. Andrew leaned forward, lowering his voice as though someone might be listening. If that's what these recordings are about, we're sitting on a time bomb. Sarah nodded. And whoever sent them knew exactly who to send them to. Think about that for a moment. Two people long cast out from the royal inner circle suddenly handed evidence that could tear open the monarchy's most sensitive secret. It was either a trap or a test, and neither outcome was safe. Sarah moved toward the window, drawing back the curtain just slightly. Outside, the grounds of Royal Lodge glistened under the soft drizzle, eerily calm. But in her chest, panic began to build. You don't think, she began, then stopped. Don't think what? Andrew pressed. That maybe she wasn't threatening an aide at all. Maybe she was threatening someone higher up. Andrew stared at her. Higher up? Sarah nodded. Someone who ordered her to stay quiet. Someone who had something to lose. He rubbed his temples, the weight of what they were implying sinking in. You're suggesting she was silenced by the palace. I'm suggesting, Sarah said, that the palace silences anyone when it needs to. It was an accusation spoken softly, but it carried the weight of truth. They both knew it. They'd lived it. Andrew had been publicly dismantled by the same system he once represented. Sarah had been shamed, exiled, then quietly tolerated only when it suited royal optics. They had seen firsthand how quickly the crown protected its image, and how ruthlessly it erased those who didn't fit the narrative. Now, as they stood listening to a woman's voice from years ago pleading about her child, it all came flooding back. The cold efficiency, the press manipulation, the way stories were bent, edited, or buried. Sarah turned, eyes burning. You think this is why she and Harry left? Andrew hesitated. If it is, they didn't leave by choice. They were pushed. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Sarah crossed her arms, her voice trembling with the kind of disbelief that comes only from déjà vu, she said. You don't understand what they made me do. What if the birth? What if something wasn't normal about it? What if that's what she was covering? Andrew gave her a long look. Do you realize what you're saying? Yes, she said softly. And it terrifies me. The fire crackled faintly, the only sound in the room. Outside, the first light of dawn was breaking through the trees, bathing the fog in gold. Inside, the truth was beginning to take shape. Not all at once, but in fragments, sharp enough to wound. Andrew picked up the flash drive again, turning it in his fingers like it might reveal its secrets under pressure. There's someone else on that tape. A man's voice. We need to know who he is. Sarah nodded. And we both know how to find out. She was right. If anyone could identify the voice of a palisade from years past, it was them. They'd been part of the machine long enough to know its workers, the discreet assistants, the private secretaries, the handlers who kept the royals' world perfectly curated. Andrew opened his laptop again, pulling up the audio file in waveform view. He adjusted the frequency balance, amplifying the quieter parts. A faint accent emerged, British, posh, but uncertain. He played it again, isolating the few words spoken by the man. Please, Duchess, this isn't safe. Sarah tilted her head. That voice, it's familiar. Andrew raised an eyebrow. Familiar how? She closed her eyes, trying to place it. I've heard it before. At Balmoral, maybe. Or during one of those charity events. Her tone softened. He was polite. Always quiet. Always there when you didn't notice. Andrew clicked his tongue. That could describe half the palace staff. She shook her head. No, this was different. He looked at people like he knew something about them they didn't want anyone else to know. Andrew froze. You're talking about Henry Hargreaves. The name hit the room like thunder. Sarah's eyes widened. Yes, that's him. Henry Hargreaves. Senior aide to the household. Loyal, discreet, and mysteriously reassigned shortly after Archie's birth. No one ever explained why. Andrew's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his glass. He was the one who handled the internal reports after Archie was born. He was supposed to make sure everything went smoothly. Sarah added quietly. And then he vanished. Now, think about that for a second. A royal aide disappears. A duchess leaves the country. The palace issues silence. And years later, a tape surfaces linking all three. That's not coincidence. That's orchestration. Andrew leaned back, deep in thought. So either Henry recorded this, or someone recorded them both. Sarah frowned. You think he was being set up? I think, Andrew said. He knew something he shouldn't. And Meghan wanted it back. For the first time that night, real fear crept into Sarah's voice. If these tapes are real, and they're about Henry, then this isn't just scandal. This is blackmail. Andrew nodded grimly. And someone wanted us to find it. The implications were staggering. If Henry had been silenced, or worse, then whoever sent the tapes wasn't just exposing Meghan. They were exposing the entire system that let it happen. Sarah walked to the fireplace, staring at the dying flames. Do you remember what Henry said to me the last time I saw him? Andrew shook his head. He said, sometimes the truth isn't hidden. It's just locked away in plain sight. Andrew frowned. Meaning what? Sarah turned, her expression unreadable. Meaning we might not be the first ones to hear these tapes. The words hit Andrew like a slap. You're saying the palace already knows. Sarah nodded slowly. And if they do, then we're in danger. That realization cracked through the calm like lightning. Andrew stood abruptly, pacing. We can't go to anyone inside. Not yet. Not until we know what's on the rest. Sarah followed him with her eyes. And what if the rest is worse? He stopped. Then we decide what kind of royals we really are. The irony was thick. Two people once exiled for their mistakes now being forced to confront the family's deepest one. Sarah sank into the armchair, clutching the glass in her hands. You realize we're playing with fire, don't you? Andrew's tone darkened. Fire's the only thing that burns through lies. A long pause followed. The weight of those words hung heavy between them. The dawn light had grown brighter, spilling across the desk, illuminating the flash drive. Small, ordinary, yet powerful enough to destabilize centuries of royal image. Sarah spoke quietly, more to herself than to him. It's strange. For years, I wanted redemption. A way to make the world see us differently. And now that chance might come from the very people who once replaced us. Andrew sighed. Careful what you wish for. He pressed play again. The audio crackled. This time, the sound was different. Less confrontation, more chaos. Meghan's breathing fast, footsteps pacing. I told you to keep it buried, she hissed. If you open that file, they'll know. Henry's voice trembled. I have to, ma'am. It's protocol. Meghan's response was barely above a whisper. Then you're sealing your fate. Click. End of file. Andrew stared at the screen, pale. She said fate. Sarah swallowed hard. And he disappeared days later. They both fell silent. There was no need for words anymore. The pieces were assembling themselves. The birth, the missing aide, the sealed report. And now, the tapes. Sarah whispered. We need to find him. Andrew looked at her sharply. If he's still alive. She didn't answer. Because deep down, they both knew. If Henry Hargreaves had survived, he would have surfaced by now. Someone made sure he didn't. The room felt colder. The air still. The quiet that follows realization. The kind that tastes like dread. Andrew looked at the flash drive one last time. If we keep this, they'll come for it. Sarah met his gaze. Then we hide it. He hesitated. Where? Her lips curled into a grim smile. Somewhere no one would ever look. Inside the walls of the family that built the lies. Outside, morning had fully broken. The rain was gone, but the clouds hung low, heavy with secrets yet to fall. Sarah turned toward the window, watching the sun pierce through the gray. You know, she murmured. For years I thought the crown was made of gold. But it's made of secrets. Andrew said nothing. He didn't have to. Because they both knew that before the day was over, those secrets would come calling again, louder, sharper, and deadlier. And the next time they heard Megan's voice, it wouldn't be on a recording. It would be in a message sent directly to them. But what that message contained would make the tapes look tame. And when Sarah opened it, she'd realize the sender wasn't Megan at all. It was someone much closer, someone royal, and someone very much alive. They say the crown never forgets. But it does something worse, it erases. That's what Henry Hargreaves had become, an erasure. A man whose name once fluttered through royal corridors, spoken softly by secretaries and footmen, now reduced to a ghost story. Sarah Ferguson sat at her breakfast table that morning, untouched toast beside her, the flash drive burning a metaphorical hole in her pocket. The night's revelations hadn't faded with daylight. If anything, they had sharpened. Every sound. The hum of the fridge, the click of a phone notification, made her flinch. Andrew was upstairs on a call, trying to sound casual, though his voice betrayed the tremor of fear. Sarah could only catch fragments. No visitors today. Yes, privacy concerns. Tell them I'm abroad if anyone asks. Privacy concerns. That phrase, so polished, so royal, was code for panic. She stared out the window, remembering Henry's face. The last time she'd seen him was years ago, at a garden event for one of her charities. He had been standing near the edge of the crowd, holding a clipboard, quietly watching everyone. He wasn't the kind of man people noticed. But Sarah had. She noticed everything back then, especially the people the royals preferred to ignore. Henry had approached her just once. His smile polite, his eyes tired. Duchess, he said, if you ever need the truth, look for the files no one talks about. She had laughed then, thinking it was just cryptic palace gossip. Now, it didn't seem funny at all. That morning, as Andrew came down, his face pale, Sarah didn't even have to ask. You called someone, she said flatly. He nodded, running a hand through his thinning hair. An old contact at Clarence's house. I asked if anyone remembers Henry Hargreaves. Sarah's eyes narrowed. And they said he never worked there. She stared. Never worked there? That's impossible. Andrew's voice dropped. I know, which means either the records were erased or he never existed. Now think about that. A man whose name appeared on dozens of palace rosters, whose voice they had just heard on a secret recording, suddenly wiped clean from history. Don't you see what this means? Sarah whispered. Someone's covering their tracks. Andrew paced. The question is who? Megan? The palace? Or both? That last word hung heavy. He went to the sideboard, poured himself another drink. Too early for whiskey, too late for coffee. We can't rely on memory, he muttered. We need proof. Sarah's phone buzzed just then, vibrating across the marble counter. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello. A pause. Static. Then a voice. Male, low, steady. Duchess Ferguson. You're asking about Henry Hargreaves. She froze. Who is this? The caller ignored her question. Stop looking. Some names were erased for a reason. And then the line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew turned sharply. Who was that? Sarah's voice trembled. Someone who knows we're listening. He grabbed the phone, scrolled through the number. No trace. No ID. Just private caller. Sarah tried to steady her breathing. You don't think? Andrew interrupted. Oh, I think exactly that. He looked toward the study where the flash drive sat hidden in a locked drawer. Someone's watching us, Sarah, and they want us scared. She swallowed. Well, it's working. He gave her a look, the same one he used to give when cornered during royal interviews. Equal parts arrogance and fear. Then maybe it's time we scared them back. But before either could speak again, there was another sound. The faint crunch of gravel outside. A car pulling up. They exchanged glances. Neither was expecting anyone. Andrew peered through the curtain. A black sedan. Tinted windows. No plates. Stay here, he murmured, but Sarah was already at his side. The engine idled. No one stepped out. Then, a minute later, it reversed, slowly, deliberately, and drove off. Andrew exhaled. Warning shot. Sarah clenched her jaw. They're not even hiding it. He turned back toward the house, grabbing the flash drive from the drawer. We need to move it. Somewhere off-site. Sarah nodded. I know just the place. She led him upstairs to a narrow hallway lined with portraits. Long-forgotten ancestors staring down from oil paintings, judgmental and pale. She reached behind one frame, pressed a hidden latch. A section of the wall opened with a soft creak. Andrew blinked. What in God's name? A habit, she said. From when reporters used to follow me everywhere. I learned how to keep certain things off the record. Inside the hidden compartment was a small lockbox. She placed the flash drive inside, then closed it again, the wall snapping back into place. There, she said. No one will find it. Andrew smirked faintly. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. Her expression hardened. I learned from the best. For a moment, they shared the briefest flicker of nostalgia. Two people who once played at royalty, now playing spies in their own home. But beneath the surface, fear simmered. Sarah sat down, staring into space. You really think Henry's gone? Andrew sighed. Gone, or made to disappear. Same thing. But why him, she pressed. What could he have known that was worth erasing? Andrew hesitated. Maybe something about the birth. About Archie. Sarah frowned. You think Henry knew what really happened? I think, Andrew said slowly. He might have been the one ordered to manage it. The implication hit her like a slap. You're saying he knew whether the baby was. She stopped herself, unable to finish. Andrew didn't have to. Exactly. Now pause for a moment. Imagine the magnitude of that realization. If Henry Hargreaves had overseen the logistics of Archie's birth, whatever those logistics were, then he held the key to the greatest royal mystery of this generation. And if Meghan really had threatened him, then the tapes weren't about intimidation. They were about containment. Sarah leaned forward. We need to know where he went after he was transferred. Andrew nodded. Already called someone about that. Who? Old contact at the Royal Protection Unit. He owed me a favor. She arched an eyebrow. And he actually answered? Andrew gave a dry laugh. Not at first. But when I mentioned Henry, he suddenly remembered me quite well. He handed her a folded note. He said Hargreaves was reassigned to an off-book position. Something under the Ministry of Defense liaison. A clerical role. No press. No paper trail. Then, 6 months later, resigned. Sarah frowned. Resigned? Or disappeared? Andrew's tone darkened. His paycheck continued for another year. Her eyes widened. Which means someone kept paying him. Or someone didn't want it to look like he was gone, Andrew said. They sat in silence for a long moment, the reality settling in. Finally, Sarah spoke. You realize what we've stumbled into, don't you? Andrew nodded grimly. Yes. And whoever's pulling the strings wants us to stop before we untangle them. He looked out the window again, scanning the driveway. The black sedan was gone, but the sense of being watched wasn't. He turned back to Sarah. We need allies. Who? Andrew thought for a moment. Someone who still owes me from the old days. Someone in the press. Sarah's eyes widened. You're thinking of Richard. He nodded. Richard Eden. He's one of the few who still answers my calls. She hesitated. Bringing the media into this could kill us, Andrew. He smirked. We're already half dead in their eyes. Might as well haunt them. Sarah sighed. Fine. But we do it my way. No leaks. No names. He agreed. Just enough to see who panics first. That was the plan. Test the waters, rattle the right cages, see which doors slammed shut first. But fate had other plans. That evening, before they could make the call, an anonymous email arrived in Sarah's inbox. No subject line. No message. Just one attachment. IMG_4175.mp4. Andrew opened it. The footage was grainy, security style. A man walking through an underground parking structure. Black coat, briefcase in hand. He moved cautiously, glancing over his shoulder. The timestamp, 2 weeks after Archie's christening. Sarah leaned closer. That's him, she whispered. That's Henry. Andrew watched as Henry approached a car, unlocked it, and placed something inside. Then he turned toward the camera. For a split second, his face was visible, tired, alert, terrified. Then, a shadow emerged from behind a pillar. A figure followed him, tall, in a dark coat. Henry turned. His expression shifted to panic. The footage froze there, a single frame, his mouth open, mid-shout. Then the file cut to black. No ending. No explanation. Andrew slammed his fist on the desk. Bloody hell, Sarah whispered. Someone sent us his last moments. He turned to her slowly. Or his first warning. Because at the bottom of the email, hidden beneath the blank space, was a single line of text, white on white, almost invisible. Sarah only found it by accident, highlighting the empty space. It read, "You're next if you keep listening." Sarah stared at it, her heart pounding. Andrew. He read it too, jaw tightening. So they know exactly what we're doing. He stood, pacing. We can't stay here. Not tonight. She grabbed her coat, adrenaline surging. Where do we go? He looked back at the hidden wall where the flash drive lay concealed. Somewhere even the crown won't look. They left Royal Lodge that night under the cover of darkness. No lights, no luggage. Just the clothes on their backs and a secret that could end them both. As they drove away, Sarah glanced back one last time. The house loomed against the storm clouds, a silent monument to the lives they'd tried to escape. Do you think he's really gone? She asked softly. Andrew didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the road. No one working for the palace ever really disappears, he said finally. They just get buried deeper. And as the car disappeared into the night, neither noticed the black sedan that pulled out of the trees behind them, following at a steady, patient distance. Because Henry Hargreaves wasn't the only ghost that night. And what Andrew and Sarah were about to uncover would make the tapes look like child's play. Because the next recording waiting for them wasn't about threats. It was about an exchange. And once they heard it, they'd realize the tapes weren't just evidence. They were a countdown. And it had just begun. How far would you go to keep a secret that could destroy a dynasty? That was the question neither Andrew nor Sarah could escape as they sped down the deserted country road that night. The windshield wipers dragged across the glass in slow, rhythmic arcs, the rain growing heavier, as though the heavens themselves were trying to drown out what they'd just heard. In the back seat, a small lockbox held the flash drive. The one with Meghan's voice, saying words no royal dared utter aloud. And for the first time in their lives, Andrew and Sarah felt something the monarchy had always reserved for others, fear. Sarah sat rigid in the passenger seat, hands gripping her phone like a lifeline. We can't just run forever, she said finally. They'll find us. They always do. Andrew didn't take his eyes off the road. Then we stay ahead of them. Where are we even going? Somewhere private. Somewhere no one expects. His tone was firm, but his knuckles were white against the steering wheel. He wasn't calm, he was buying time. They drove in silence for a while, the headlights slicing through the rain. Then Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another message. No number. Just a single line. Play the rest. Her breath caught. Andrew, they're telling us to keep going. He shot her a quick glance. Who is? The same people who sent the first files. She stared at the screen. It's not a warning anymore. It's an order. Andrew slowed the car, pulling off onto a narrow country lane lined with trees. He parked under the shadow of an old oak and turned to her. So what do they want? For us to expose it or bury it? Sarah's voice trembled. Maybe both. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Then let's find out. They retrieved the flash drive, booting up the laptop on the dashboard. Another file blinked at them, archive_03. Andrew clicked it. Static. Then the unmistakable sound of a door closing. Footsteps. A muffled voice, Henry's. I told you, I can't destroy it. They'll know. Then Meghan's voice again, low, deliberate, laced with venom. You can and you will. Or I promise you, Henry, if you ever speak, I'll make sure you regret it. Silence. Then the sound of breathing. Hers, controlled but heavy. Henry's tone quivered. You don't understand what they'll do to me. You're worried about what they'll do to you, she snapped. You should be worried about me. Andrew froze. That tone, it wasn't just anger. It was panic. Controlled panic. Sarah leaned closer, her hand trembling slightly as she turned up the volume. On the recording, Megan's voice softened suddenly. I don't want to hurt you, Henry, but you're leaving me no choice. This isn't about you. It's about survival. Then came a sound neither of them expected. A chair scraping, footsteps retreating, a door slamming shut. And finally, Henry's voice, broken and scared. They'll find out anyway. They always do. The recording ended. Sarah pressed her hand against her chest, breathing fast. She said those words. She actually said them. Andrew nodded grimly. And he's dead, or worse. Sarah shook her head, tears forming. No, it's too easy. That wasn't a threat to kill him. That was something else. Andrew looked at her sharply. What are you saying? I'm saying she wasn't acting alone. He frowned. Meaning? Meaning someone told her to make that threat. Think about that for a second. A Duchess recorded threatening a palisade. Not out of impulse, but obedience. That changed everything. Andrew stared out the window, rain streaking down the glass. So you think this goes higher? Sarah nodded. Much higher. The car sat in eerie stillness, surrounded by the quiet hum of rain and tension. The monarchy had always run on secrets, but this wasn't the usual kind of cover-up. This was coercion. Control. Fear weaponized from within. Andrew exhaled slowly. If these tapes ever surface, they won't just destroy Megan. They'll burn the whole family. Sarah looked at him, eyes sharp. Then maybe that's why they sent them to us. Because we're the fall guys? Because we're the last ones anyone would believe. It was twisted logic, but it made sense. Who better to leak something world-shattering than two royals already exiled by scandal? If the tapes went public, everyone would assume Andrew and Sarah were chasing relevance, not truth. Meanwhile, the real players would remain untouchable. Andrew rubbed his face, exhaustion etched into his features. We need to confirm it's her voice. Beyond doubt. Sarah nodded. I know someone who can. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the name. Michael Tarrant, forensic audio analyst. He worked with Scotland Yard once, she explained. If anyone can tell us if it's authentic, it's him. Andrew sighed. And if it is? Then the palace won't be able to bury it anymore. Hours later, in a dimly lit London flat far from Windsor, Michael Tarrant adjusted his headphones and opened the files. His face, worn and serious, betrayed no emotion as the voices played through the speakers. Megan's, Henry's, the silence between them, it was all too human. When the audio ended, he sat back, rubbing his chin. I've heard doctored recordings before, he said finally. This isn't one of them. Sarah's heart raced. You're certain? Michael nodded. The vocal patterns, the stress markers, they're consistent with live conversation. If this is fake, it's a world-class forgery. Andrew paced the small room. And if it's real? Michael hesitated. Then you've just stumbled into the biggest scandal since Diana's tapes, and possibly the most dangerous. That word, dangerous, hung in the air like smoke. Sarah leaned forward. Michael, can you trace where it was recorded? He shook his head. Not easily. The background's been filtered. But I caught something. A faint hum, consistent with an air filtration unit. Not typical in a residence. More like an archive room. Andrew froze. An archive? Michael nodded. Somewhere with restricted access. Maybe a secure wing in the palace. Sarah whispered. So she was recorded inside Buckingham Palace? Or beneath it? Michael said grimly. That revelation sent shivers down their spines. The palace wasn't just a home. It was a fortress of hidden rooms, tunnels, and chambers no one talked about. If someone had installed recording equipment inside, it meant one thing. There was a spy within the monarchy itself. Andrew turned to Sarah. Someone inside the palace recorded Megan. Someone who wanted this saved, Sarah whispered. Or someone who wanted her silenced. Back in the car, driving through London's back streets, Sarah's thoughts raced faster than the rain outside. What if Henry wasn't just a victim, she said quietly. What if he was part of something bigger, something that got out of control? Andrew didn't answer right away. His mind was running its own race. You're suggesting he was working for the palace, monitoring Megan? Sarah nodded. Exactly. They used him to keep tabs on her. But he got too close, and she found out. Andrew exhaled. And when she confronted him, he recorded her. Right? Only he never got to use it. That theory fit too perfectly, and it terrified them both. Andrew glanced at her. If that's true, we're not dealing with a single leak. We're dealing with espionage. Sarah's voice softened. And the royal family has always been very good at cleaning its own mess. They reached a small safe house Michael had arranged for them, a rented property outside the city, hidden by trees and surrounded by silence. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Inside, Sarah sat by the fire, her mind replaying the moment Meghan said, "If you ever speak, I'll make sure you regret it." The voice wasn't just threatening, it was desperate. It was the voice of someone cornered, someone protecting something, or someone. She turned to Andrew. "You ever notice how her tone changes halfway through the recording?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "Listen again," she said, hitting play. At first, she's furious. Then suddenly she's frightened, like she's not talking to him anymore. Andrew leaned in. She was right. Halfway through the sentence, Meghan's tone dropped, almost like she'd realized someone else was in the room. What if someone walked in? Sarah whispered. Someone who wasn't supposed to hear. The idea sent chills down Andrew's spine. Then whoever it was might be the one who finished the job. Sarah looked up sharply. "You mean?" "Yes," he said. "If Henry died, that person killed him." The thought settled like ash. Sarah rubbed her temples. "So where does that leave us?" Andrew poured a drink, the ice clinking loudly in the glass. "And over our heads." Again. But just then, Sarah's phone buzzed once more. This time, it wasn't a text. It was an email. No sender. No subject. Just an attachment labeled transcript. She opened it. Her face went pale. It was a word-for-word transcript of the entire conversation they'd just listened to. Typed, dated, formatted like an official document. Andrew took the phone from her and read the header aloud. "Property of Her Majesty's private archives. Restricted access." He looked up, stunned. "The palace already has these files," Sarah whispered. "Then they sent them to us on purpose." Andrew shook his head slowly. "No, someone inside did." The implications were enormous. Someone within the palace wanted this out, but not through the press. Through them. Sarah stared into the fire, her voice trembling. "Andrew, what if it's not about exposing Meghan? What if it's about warning the king?" He turned sharply. "Warning him about what?" She met his gaze. "That his house isn't as loyal as he thinks." The fire popped, a log cracking down the middle. The moment felt final, irreversible. Andrew leaned back, exhausted. "We need to sleep. Tomorrow, we figure out who's feeding us." Sarah nodded slowly. But neither of them slept. Because both knew that when morning came, the truth wouldn't be waiting quietly, it would be hunting them. And the next file, waiting deep inside that flash drive, wouldn't just expose Meghan's threats. It would reveal who she was protecting. And once that name surfaced, even the king himself couldn't save them. Because the next voice they'd hear wasn't Meghan's. It was someone higher. And when they heard it, Andrew's blood would run cold. What's worse than hearing a threat caught on tape? Hearing a second voice. One that changes everything you thought you knew about who was really in control. It happened the following morning, just before dawn. The fire in the safe house had long gone out, leaving behind the faint smell of smoke and damp wood. Sarah hadn't slept. She sat near the window, watching the gray sky lighten, the weight of the night's revelations pressing against her chest like a stone. Andrew had dozed off on the couch, the empty glass still in his hand. She reached for the flash drive again, almost instinctively. Something told her they hadn't reached the end. Something about that last recording, the silence after Meghan's threat, the shift in tone, felt unfinished. When she plugged it in, another file appeared. One they hadn't seen before. Archive_04. She stared at it for a moment, hesitant. Then, quietly, she whispered, "One more." She clicked play. The recording began the same way. The hum of an air vent, faint background noise. But then, almost immediately, a new voice entered. A man's. Calm. Firm. British. "She's right, Henry," the voice said. "You'd do well to listen." Sarah froze. It wasn't Harry. It wasn't Charles. But it was someone who spoke with authority, someone accustomed to being obeyed. Henry stammered. "Sir, I didn't realize." The man cut him off. "You don't need to realize anything. Just follow orders. Delete the report. All of it." Meghan's voice interjected, sharper now, almost relieved. "You see? Even he agrees." Sarah's heartbeat quickened. This wasn't a conversation between enemies. This was coordination. She turned up the volume, straining to catch every word. Henry hesitated. But the files were requested by the household office. They'll notice if they disappear. The man sighed, almost bored. Let me worry about that. A pause. Then, softer. You've been loyal, Henry. Don't ruin it now. And then, for the first time, Sarah heard it. That unmistakable note in his tone. Not threat. Not warning. Control. The file ended abruptly with a metallic click, like a recorder being switched off. Sarah sat there in stunned silence, the faint hum of the laptop filling the room. Behind her, Andrew stirred. What's that noise? She turned slowly. You need to hear this. He rubbed his eyes, groggy. Another tape? Sarah nodded, pressing play again. They listened together this time. The same words. The same commanding tone. The same quiet dread. When it ended, Andrew stared at her, face pale. That voice. You recognize it? She asked. He swallowed hard. I shouldn't. But I do. Sarah leaned closer. Who is it? Andrew hesitated. I think it's from the household. Someone close to the king. She frowned. Which one? He met her gaze. The one they don't talk about anymore. The air between them grew cold. You mean? Yes, Andrew said. The same man who used to manage royal correspondence. The fixer. Sarah's eyes widened. Sir David Kingswell. Andrew nodded grimly. For years, Kingswell had been the palace's quiet enforcer, the man who handled difficult matters. He wasn't a royal by blood, but he had access to everything. He was the whisper behind closed doors, the handler of inconvenient truths. Sarah whispered, so he's the second voice. Andrew nodded. And if he's involved, this isn't just about Meghan. It's about the entire chain of command. Now pause and think about that for a moment. If the second voice belonged to Kingswell, it meant the order to delete the report, the one Meghan and Henry argued over, came from the palace itself, which meant Meghan hadn't been the instigator. She'd been the messenger. Andrew stood, pacing. She wasn't threatening him for herself. She was carrying out someone else's orders. Sarah felt her stomach turn. You're saying she was being used. Exactly. That realization changed everything. Meghan, the supposed manipulator, might have been just another pawn, the perfect scapegoat. Sarah leaned back, exhaling. So she wasn't protecting herself. She was protecting them. Andrew nodded slowly. And the only question left is, who's them? The room fell silent again. Outside, birds began to stir in the trees, a cruel contrast to the darkness unfolding inside. Sarah replayed the clip once more, her mind catching a faint detail she'd missed before. In the background, faintly, barely audible, was another sound. A chime. Not just any chime. A clock. She leaned forward, turning up the volume. 1, 2, 3 strikes. Andrew frowned. You recognize that? Sarah nodded slowly. It's the Westminster clock. He stared at her, meaning the recording was made inside the palace itself. She looked down at the laptop screen, which means whoever recorded it had access to restricted areas. No ordinary staffer could have been there. Andrew exhaled. So we're not just dealing with a mole. We're dealing with someone royal. Sarah's pulse quickened. You mean someone in the family? He nodded. Yes, someone close enough to hear everything. That theory seemed impossible, and yet it fit too perfectly. Sarah's mind raced. Who had been in proximity to both Meghan and Kingswell during those months? Who had the means to move through the palace unnoticed, trusted by both camps, invisible to the public? Then it hit her. She looked up at Andrew. Princess Eugenie. Andrew blinked. My daughter. Sarah nodded. Think about it. She was one of the few who kept contact with Meghan after the split. She still had palace clearance. She was sympathetic, trusted. If she recorded this, it wasn't out of malice. It was protection. Andrew's expression hardened. You think Eugenie sent us the tapes? I think she might have been the one holding on to them. And when she realized what she had, she passed them to us. Andrew shook his head slowly, disbelief and dread mixing in his voice. If that's true, she's in danger. Sarah's tone softened. Then we need to find her before they do. Without wasting another second, Andrew grabbed his phone and dialed her number. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. Sarah placed a hand on his arm. Andrew calmed down. But he was already pacing. She was in London yesterday. I spoke to her. She said she was going to visit the palace today. Sarah's heart sank. Then she's walking straight into it. They packed up quickly, laptop, flash drive, documents, and left the safe house. The drive to London was a blur of wet roads and half-finished thoughts. Every mile felt like a countdown. When they reached Eugenie's flat, the lights were off. No car. No movement. Andrew pounded on the door. "Eugenie, it's your father." Nothing.